I need to lose weight. Horrible sight. Anyway, moving on. This is really trippy. I'm seeing myself kind of move around in almost some weird hologram sort of thing going on. Okay, right, let's get on with the show. I've got an hour. Has the clock started? Oh, crap. Who's giving me 45 minutes? Really? The clock is going 45 minutes? Come on. Anyway, moving on quickly. So yeah, I'm CEO, co-founder of a company called Makuta. We're a visual effects studio based out of Hyderabad. And so there's the Obituary card. If anyone wants to grab me, yeah, I'm not Prabhas, but thanks anyway. Anybody wants to grab us on Instagram, it's Makuta VFX. If anyone wants to grab me, it's the boy Pedro. Normally it's just me and my pictures of my kid, but anyway, moving on. And generally, this is what we do. Have the audio, please. Thanks, guys. So what I want to talk to you today is a process that we call script to screen. And that's basically going from the first thing that we get, which is obviously the general script. And I think one of the gentlemen earlier said locked script earlier. So going back on exactly what he said also. And then finalizing it straight through to final post-production and final release. So it's basically a script to screen, or how not to go nuts on a show, or at least try not to. So this is very kind of like a very loose overview, because I've only got X amount of time to go through this. So I'll plow through this as quickly as I can. So the first thing we do when we actually get a script through is do what's called a script analysis. So that's basically breaking the script down into manageable sections, and that's going to be determining the load and the aesthetic for each individual requirement. So just to give you a rough idea, we then get through what's called mood boards. It's something that we request from the direction department, so that gives us an idea for each individual section what we're actually physically going to be dealing with. So what's your mood set for here? What's your thought process? What's the aesthetic going to look like? What's the timing, pace, etc.? In essence, it's just like a collage. We call a mood board, in essence, something that you would get like a pin board. You stick a load of images up, etc., or footage for influence, for reference, for inspiration, and that kind of thing. Okay? So yeah, that gives us references for each scene or key element, which is requested and researched by ourselves if none is actually provided or presented. This can take a while. When I'm saying taking a while, I'm not meaning a couple of hours, I mean a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months, because at this stage things are fluid. Things tend to go around and around and around quite a lot, and it requires someone to take a decision. And that, from that decision point, things start rolling onwards. So from that script, we break it down. So this is just a sample that we did as an example for you guys for Empire Strikes Back, which, fun fact, we didn't work on. I wish we did, but we didn't. So this, in essence, is going through the Hoth breakup, all right? So we've got split down into definitive works, possible works, and the total works. The possibles are basically wishes. This might happen. These are based on our assumptions, based on the script that we're going through, okay? So first one, an aerial shot tilts down, bringing into view a small figure galloping across a windswept ice slope. So the requirements possibly CG creature, CG character, the snow. The duration is basically around 5 seconds because that's the description of what's there in the script. So generally in a script, it's a page. 1 page is a minute, and you can kind of break that down into estimated durations based on those page counts. Okay, so the total works is given as that breakdown, and then our assumptions, assuming live background plate shot from copter. All right? So that gives a kind of a very, very rudimentary breakdown, and we do this for the full show, or specific scenes which the direction department have gone to as, these scenes require VFX, these ones don't. Okay? So we basically, this assumption breakdown that's sent to production department or the direction department for clarity. So this is our assumptions on what we think is going to happen. Okay? This gets fed back to us with the feedback from the direction department, and they go, yep, you're right, or no, you're wrong, this is exactly what we want. We bounce back and forth, and then we come to a conclusion. At this particular point in time, we start implementing what's called a project tracking system. This can be anything from utilizing Google Sheets or Excel if you're crazy, or you can use something like Shotgun or Cerebro or one of these other third-party vendors. This will actually save you time later on if you start it early, because then you're just you're populating a trusted system, so therefore you're keeping things up to date. This will save you time later on when you're scrambling to put everything together once you've actually come from the shoot. Plus, the producer will want to know every single thing, from the delivery times, the estimation on budgets, and when on earth you're going to complete a certain shot or a certain scene. Speaking of budgets, these are your 3 options, okay? This is basically the end-all, be-all, and this is the one that makes or breaks you. The reason why I'm saying that is that you get asked, how much for 60 minutes worth of visual effects? Okay, let me ask you a question. How much for a meal? How much does a meal cost? How much does food cost? You can eat on the street, it'll cost you $50. Or you can eat at a 5-star, it'll cost you $2.5 to $3 grand. It all depends on the quality of the material that you're consuming, and therefore what the bill's going to be. So this first one, we hate. We hate it. Every single VFX studio hates this. This is called fixed rate. These are the reasons why studios go under. This is the reason why R&H went under, for stuff like this, okay? Second one, per shot menu system. The menu system is, in essence, this stuff is easy, it's this much. This stuff is medium, it's this much. This stuff is paintwork, it's this much. This stuff is difficult, this stuff is impossible, and it's this much. So in essence, it's still based on per minute, but it's tiered, okay? This is a little bit better. Yeah, we get into different ranges kind of thing. And then the best one, really, is per man day. You do it based on an overall estimation, but that requires very kind of finesse and a lot of information coming in from the production team very, very, very early on, so that you have an idea on how much work needs to be required, okay? You can then do general estimations on how many man days per sequence based on the scene breakdowns from the script itself. That requires more time, but at the end of the day, you're going to get a more finessed costing, okay? Plus, if the director does decide to change his mind 60 ways from Sundays, you can bill for that, which is always nice. One other thing you don't cost into this is your assets, okay? You never cost your assets into the man day rate, into the per minute in any way. And the reason being is the same analogy of building a set, a physical set. Doesn't matter whether or not you're shooting it for a second, a minute, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes. it still costs the same amount of money. You still got to build the asset. So you have to make sure that this is costed not only into your schedule, but also into your man days, and thus the cost of exactly how much it's going to be. From this particular point in time, you can start conceptualizing, okay? Just giving you a few samples of various different things that made it and that failed and so on. But at this particular point in time, you want to start conceptualizing what the vision of the shot's going to be, what the vision of this particular element's going to be, the asset, the scene, etc., just to get everybody into the right flow of things. So in essence, you're taking the script elements, you're taking the mood boards, and you're refining things into and channeling them into a certain aesthetic that somebody is going to take a decision on. Okay? This can take a while, because you'll go through several revisions. It may take months on this. This is pre-production stage still. So this takes more time, but it costs less than making decision changes later on. If you make these decision changes later on, it costs a lot more, especially if you're starting to do experimentation on set. Okay? So just to give you a rough idea of how things kind of progress. So for the Swan Boat episode, for example, we start with a concept artwork. We start blitzing through that and give various different ideas for the director to have an idea of what these shots are going to look like. Okay? These are then boarded. This is not those boards, unfortunately. I couldn't source those. But this gives you an idea of how refined things can go. They can go very sketchy, very light, or they can go more refined and so on down into fine detail. This is Gilla, I think it was. So the storyboard can actually give you key sequences that require VFX, or the entire scene if it's allowed, and it's basically roughed out. All right? Again, this can take several rounds as well. This is going to give more departments influence to take decisions, etc. But the best thing is about this is you can put your film into a timeline. You can see your film laid out and see how cameras are working, transitions, and you can see how the pace of things go. There's one director called Edgar Wright. Has anybody heard of him? Did Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, did Baby Driver recently. He storyboards every single shot of his film. Every single one, from start to finish. You look at the transitions in his entire films, and they are slick. Absolutely slick as hell. So really, really nicely done. Really tight, really refined. So he'll go from one shot to another. He'll shoot this one on one day, he'll shoot that one 5 months later or whenever it is. And they'll just flow, because he's literally populating the edit after he's actually boarded the entire thing out. So he's actually doing the assembly on the spot. So going from those concept works, we go into a previs. So the previs from the boards, from the concepts, from the storyboards, into a previs idea. We can see how things are starting to work out. We can see how these angles are working. Well, it's an AC unit. And we can see what's working and what's not working. Case in point, this is not working. This is too fast. The 3D camera shake that they added is terrible. So we know that we need to refine that and bin that thing. So the actual entire sequence is actually just sectioned off and slowed down a lot, just to kind of get that more graceful aesthetic as we're flowing through. And also we wanted to throw in an additional bit of dialogue between the three principal characters. These particular shots, by the way, that one that you saw there, the 3 shot, was actually bunged together in around 2 hours. And the reason why it was bunged together in about 2 hours is because it was literally just dropped on us around about 48 hours before we actually had the drop dead. By designing stuff in previs, it also helps you with complicated sequences that you need to do on set. Case in point, you can reverse engineer some stuff. In the intermission episode within the second film, we actually had a series of elephants which needed to raise up in celebration of Rana getting crowned, etc., or Barbly getting cheered, or whatever it may be. We actually built an elephant model for one cutaway shot in the first film, and we'd already kind of pre-rigged that. We already had the animation work already done. So what they wanted us to do is to try and reuse that asset for the second film, change the model a little bit, keep the animation, but actually adjust the textures and the distribution and so on. So we actually took that, we reverse engineered that by working out where this guy, if we had a physical person on there, where they would need to physically sit, how much displacement there would be, and from that we built a rig. So it was one big rig, it's like a cantilever, elevated really high. We pulled all these guys up and down to give them the exact same timing and the exact same position as they would need to be if they were set on the back of one of these elephants. Same deal when it was kneeling, okay? Working out all these measurements and the displacements and so on. Let's see. Connection's lost. Yeah. This also helps in certain areas which we had problems actually physically shooting stuff within the second film. Case in point, if you see the bottom right diagram, there was a shot where Prabhas comes in, lands in the ball formation with Katapa, bounces, and then stands up. Okay? We actually used a stunt double for Prabhas. And we're actually having some problems by doing, originally we were doing a full digital head for him. We were completely replacing the head. The head wasn't working. Wasn't working at all. So we ended up reverse engineering the track from that particular camera action that we did, took the track, reverse engineered that, and worked out the camera displacement position relative to Prabhas's head, and then just told Prabhas to just give a certain gesture, a certain action, and we shifted the camera accordingly, and then we could just mat his head. So in essence, we did like a reverse motion capture. So it worked pretty well. Some scale variation, we went through about 5 rounds, making sure his head was the right size, and tracking was fine, but just making sure his head was actually propped on properly. So the other thing was that in the top diagram there, you'll notice that we're actually shooting about 4 additional characters that we planned and plotted out for the balcony episodes where Rana's giving dialogue to his dad. And primarily, the director wanted 3 extra characters to be inserted in there because they had some role within the show later on, okay? So again, a lot of reverse engineering going on at this stage. We can also actually pre-visualize entire scenes. So this was actually just an idea that we had for the introduction of Kuntalarajam. It was originally just going to be a couple of people just walking through, but then they decided to change it to the entire aesthetic. But because we'd actually blocked the entire thing out ourselves, we were the ones who were driving how the scene was going to be shot. So we wanted to make sure that the camera work and the positions of the trees was going to be favorable, and also the light direction to show the depth was going to be working for us. So from that, we drove exactly where we needed to place this thing, place where the shadows were going to be, place where the flags were going to cut the lights, and we literally shot this in a grand total of around about 10 minutes. The shot itself took a lot longer to produce in the end, but the entire shoot itself, because we'd planned everything, there was no scratching of heads and wondering what was going to happen and, oh, are we getting the right rushes through? So planning dictates, you know, you can do quite well. You can remove those variables. At this particular point in time, also, anything that you know you're going to need, you can start constructing. You can start building this stuff at this particular point in time, so that elements like, for example, things that are going to be floating, things that are going to be not influenced by third parties, for example, unconstructed sets, can be built at this time. Your main objective here is to try and save as much time in post-production as possible. So you're maximizing the entire production shoot and production time to work on these elements so that you can get the best quality possible for the budget that you've got and the time that you've physically got available to you. However, this can be risky, but it can save you time later on when things get really, really tight and, oh shit, suddenly we need an asset. Let's get on there quickly and build it, and you're going to be ended up fudging things together a little bit. So elements like, for example, the elephant, the baby, and some of the temple structures that we actually built for the first and second films is something that we preempted, that we knew about before we even got these rushes through. Before we even went to floor, we knew we were going to actually need these things. At this time also, pre-shoot, you need to start talking about costume. Costume will dictate what sort of screen that you've got, and sometimes in some cases, well, a lot of cases in fact, you can actually influence the costume decision with regards to things like materials, colors, etc. So for example, here, we were making sure that we were not using a green screen. Obviously because Rana's got a green cloth on. We're also making sure that that blue screen is actually way, way far away than it needs to be so that there's no spill going on to him. All right? We're making sure that the cloth itself, the cloth originally was going to be a lot more shiny. That would have given a lot of kick to a lot of chroma elements. And that helmet also that he's wearing is also purposely dulled down. There's a lot of dulling spray on that. Otherwise, we get a lot of reflections going on there. Okay? So color choice will dictate, costume color choice will dictate your color choice of chroma screen. Blue reflects color. All right? Green reflects light. It bounces a lot more light back than blue screen does. Green is more suited for lighter skin tones. So those of you who are basically lighter skin tone, that is more favorable because it bounces the same sort of color, so you won't get that white fringing that you see in a lot of comps. Okay? Blue screen, you tend to key the color. All right? You don't necessarily key the luminance. You key the luminance for green screen. So therefore, when you're setting these screens up, you need to make sure that any irregularities or faults in these things, you are having these elements in mind for your comp team working back at the studio. Okay? So case in point here, we've got some variations in luminance going on, but they're all the same color. So we can just gray matte this entire lot out to take out the luminance, and then we can key this off very, very, very straightforward. All right? Works quite well. Again, all same color, various different luminances, but still that will key out in one go if you basically remove that light variation, which is in essence is just sticking the luminance layer directly over that's set to a mid-gray. You can then just key that color straight out of there, and it works for around about 90% of the work. This, on the other hand, is a bit more of a nightmare. And the reason being is that because it's green matte, you've got a lot of key going there, it's bouncing a lot of light through, and also you've got a lot of variations in light in the shadowing on the sides. Okay, so a bit more of a nightmare going on there, but thankfully we've got not so many grads. You can garbage matte a lot of that stuff out, and you can pretty much extract a decent matte from it with a little bit of roto work going in there as well. This, on the other hand, don't do this. This happened to me on one show some time back. Let me just go back a slide 1 second. This I turned up, and this is the best I got. This is what was dumped on me. So this is what we had to work with to try and extract these things. So we have literally 2 to 3 different blue screen colors. We've also got irregularities in the actual screen itself. We've got tape marks in there from previous works. If you scupper cost on blue screen or green screen, your CG will suffer as a result. You have to make sure that your green mats or your blue mats are of a good quality. They're black matted off, they're exposed correctly. Otherwise, you end up with problems later on. A lot of people ask us, why is this CG like this? Why is this CG like that? And it's because of things like this. I went on a shoot once overseas. I landed, I got out, and I unpacked the box of the blue mat that they'd given me. It was cyan color. And it even had tape marks and print marks from the printers all over this thing. Absolute nightmare. We ended up having to buy new screens while we were there and scramble to make sure we could actually get the work done. Okay, so yeah, don't do this. Or don't accept it. You have a lot of problems later on and will increase the time and cost of the post-production because you're going then into roto. You're not pulling a key, you're going to roto, and that takes time. Time is a factor, which is a problem. This also is an issue. Don't do this either. Spend the time and get your cloth straight. With its, if that was blue matte, would be relatively okay. But the fact that it's green, you've got a lot of variations in shade, a lot of variations in luminance going on there, and that is going to be very tough to extract. Okay? So make sure that you have the time to be able to set these things up properly. You've got enough crew to be able to set these things up. If you need the time, speak to the first AD, if there is a first AD on set, to be able to get these things set up neatly for you. Okay? Don't rush it. And most importantly, meter the thing. Make sure that it is exposed correctly relative to camera, otherwise you're going to have issues later. You're going to get this fringing problem. If they're burning too much, you're going to get the white fringe on the edges, and then extracting that is going to be an absolute nightmare for you later on. See, that wasn't too much of an issue. Because it was blue, the various luminances really didn't matter in the end. We managed to extract it just by extracting the color, and it worked through quite neatly. Even these other shots here, when we're actually shooting this thing, I actually shot this at the producer's house, this particular shot, and it was actually taken underneath his tree in his back garden. There are lots of various luminances going on, but it managed to extract quite nicely. Just because we pull in the color and not the luminance. Same deal here. This is a show we did back in 2010, I think it was, which was Yera Maravu, a Tamil film, Makuta and Surya. And again, if you notice, we've got a lot of reflection on here. Now, thankfully, we managed to extract that, cease it, and also replace reflections in there. We actually utilized the matte to be able to generate the reflections of the elements in the background. The other option is you stick a polarizer on that. You stick a polarizer on the lens, and that will remove that color cast on that reflection. It'll get rid of it, but you lose the stop of light. So you talk to the camera department. You speak to the DP to see what you can do to try and minimize these problems. One of the best things that we actually invested in years ago was actually this thing called a LiDAR. So it basically goes through and scans the space so we know exactly where everything is. This actually helps us reduce the need for putting tracking markers in shots. So tracking markers, in essence, are basically just giving you areas of contrast. That's all they do. It just gives you a contrast reference point, and if you know where it is, even better. But it literally just gives you a reference point of contrast so that the tracking software can grab it. The smaller you can make it, the better. But also the fact that you don't want to go crazy and make it too contrasty, because you are going to basically annoy one other department. So tracking will be very happy with you. Comp's going to be pissed because they've got to paint all that stuff out. So it's a balancing act. So we know where everything is. We don't need to place all these massive markers in there. So the only time we can see some of these ones in here is because other studios have demanded that they go in. We didn't need. It wasn't necessary because we had this information. This was actually the first scan that we did. So in this show, this is the first major scan that we did on a feature. And we actually went overboard. We actually created too much data. We created too much information for it. So at this particular stage, your set extension builds can be started because you know where things are. If you've already got your set build done, provided there's nothing going to be floating, which is basically set pieces moving around, you can start building your digital set extensions at this particular point in time before you even go to floor. Sometimes the scan will actually happen post-shoot once they've wrapped it, because then they've sometimes they're building the set as they're shooting. This does happen. So what will happen is that the scan will only need to be done after the shoot is completed. Okay, so obviously there's going to be maybe a week, 2 weeks delay there, plus processing. But a lot of the time this can be preempted, but can be risky. Okay? If you've got rehearsals done at this particular point in time, you can pretty much know where things are going to be. So now you go to shoot and hope everything turns out okay. Just let them go ahead with it. No. It's a lot of scramble a lot of times. A lot of the things that you've planned, you've storyboarded, you've prevised, they are in ideal scenarios. They are in precise controlled conditions that you have dictated. You, your director, and your DP have dictated. And a lot of the times, they don't go to pass. So when we're doing these extension works, for example, in a lot of these shows, we're planning for certain angles, we're planning for certain compositions, but these are not actually what we can physically achieve on set. Maybe it's a little bit here, maybe it's a little bit here. Maybe the actual composition was not working, so we ended up actually having to shift camera. That is possibly in some cases going to increase the load and also change the entire workload of the particular shot itself. That was the outside of that building. Someone kept using it as a toilet. It was not very nice. So the shoot itself is, everyone thinks it's glamorous. It's not. It's hot, it's sweaty. I thought that was for me, okay. It's hot, it's sweaty, and it's a lot of scramble at times, and it's a case of like suddenly, oh God, we've got to get this shot done, we've got to have this shot done. So you're trying to reduce that variable, that surprise, that element happening, and trying to get things done in case so that you can actually anticipate the workload that's going to happen back at the set, back at the studio later on, all right? So your mission on set is literally a case of trying to collate as much data as physically possible. So you have this, you know, back at the studio, you have all of these fancy toys, you've got these high-end systems, you've got these simulation engines, and da-da-da-da-da. What you normally have on set is a bunch of cameras, measuring tape, sticky tape, and basically big shiny white balls. It looks very, very analog, but those references are there for a purpose. So you're trying to get down the camera information, you're trying to log everything as neatly as possible. You can do this on paper if you want. So that is an example of basically one show. That's how much data we would log on one show. Okay? All that needs to be processed and stuck into a single system, scanned, categorized, and put in with all the reference photographs and so on. That was for Ego. Okay? That was all the stuff that we shot for, that we took for Ego. Combined with in-house dev guys, we actually decided to get rid of all that, and we basically built our own app so that we could log everything in one device, okay? Which also synchronized with adjacent devices in case of one person dropped one. It's always risky, never take things to chance. So you could actually have one guy logging one camera, another guy logging camera, another guy logging another camera, and the supervisor sat next to monitor and noting all the main fundamentals down, which was, you know, shot requirements, asset requirements, workflow processes, etc. So in essence, you're designing the shot on the spot. The process, everything is in your head, and you're in the moment, and you're designing it now. The most important thing is to try and get as much thing down as possible so that you can physically remove any variables and we're not sure later on. Another important thing to do is to calibrate everything. That's not just your lenses, your cameras, and logging all that stuff down, but also making sure that everything you have back at the studio is set up the same way as what things were utilized on set. So calibrate and measure everything, every single thing, because you only have one chance to get it. You can't go back to the director and go, yeah, I missed that. Can we shoot again? They're never going to go with it. So it's better to log something and not need it than log something, than not log something and need it later. Always play it safe, because you never know. It takes you 2 minutes to log something down. The other way to tackle a shot, because sometimes productions will only give you the opportunity to have one person on set. Well, we've only used one person on set before, and that worked okay. Yeah, I've seen your work, it's not. So you need to have, just like camera department have a crew, you need a crew. You need as many people as you need to physically get the job done, logged, recorded, and discussed and processed. So you think about exactly, okay, how would I, if I was doing the shot myself, what would I require? If I'm doing lighting, have I got that information? If I'm doing comp, have I got that information? If I'm doing comp, have I got the screen set up properly? Have I got too many markers in there? If I'm doing tracking, do I have enough markers in there? Do I have enough contrast in there? Do I need markers at all? Can I just get rid of those guys? Do I have a neat scan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Do I have model references for props, things that artists are interacting with that I need to do extension works for, and so on and so on? All of these things, you have to put yourself in that role, every single role in the studio, within a second. Because the director will ask you how to do this shot. We need to do this shot, how to do it. And immediately you should go through all the processes and churn out, right, this is how we do it. Like you've done that shot a million times. You haven't, but you've done something like it. So you're using experience, and that's the key thing. Experience of how to do a specific task. If you've planned it in advance, you don't need to do this because you've already done it all and you've already discussed it and everybody knows how to do these sorts of things. So, pre-production planning reduces the variables. It reduces the variables to a point where you're actually not needing to do that, I'm not sure, on the spot. You never should do that anyway. But you should know exactly what you need to have, what the shot should have, what the processes should be, where the camera's going to be. Everything's fixed, locked. So when you go to floor, there are no surprises. Or if there are, they're as little as possible. Okay? So here we spent months and months and months designing, redesigning the control episode. A lot of the concept artwork was passed across to us. Some of it we did. Some of it was passed across to us from their production team. They commissioned other studios to work on these things. We work with other studios in Hyderabad as well, like the guys at Firefly. I think Sunlas done an awesome presentation previously here. And it's these sorts of things, these collaborations, not only with the direction department, but also with the other studios, where you can actually communicate and put all these things together so you've got something that looks great on screen. But that's because of the planning. It's not because of, not sure. It's somebody fixing and taking a decision on things. Unknown variables are the worst things to have on set. Suddenly just having a spontaneous, okay, not necessarily the worst thing, but it's basically, it's one of those things that you don't have time to prep, you don't have time to plan. Even recently on one shoot that I was working on not so long ago, one director's coming to me and saying, right, I've got this idea for this shot, we want to do this. When are we doing it? In about 2 minutes. Okay, so how do we shoot this? And literally on the spot, you've got to think of the process. You've got to go through every single thing. And the scary thing is that if one has missed something, one little thing, you could create maybe 2 weeks extra work for the guys back at the studio. And that decision is something that you have to kind of make on the spot. You know, VFX doesn't like variables because we've got a limited amount of time as it is. We've already release date has already been announced. We've still got to work to these things. So a lot of the time, one of my actual objectives on set is to try and remove those variables. These variables can also come in the form of people leaving shift lying there when it's not supposed to be. Case in point, cables. One of the shots that you saw earlier on, I'm not going to say which one it is because some people might be seeing this and I might get into shit. But basically cables, a big budget feature, cables left right through frame and around about 40% of the work that was done on that shot was cleanup. And that is basically where a lot of the budget on visual effects goes. An entire feature film's visual effects budget, you have a fixed amount of money. If you're basically diluting that money by wastage, which is in essence stuff that's not supposed to be there on set, someone leaving a cup. You know the Game of Thrones cup, the Game of Thrones coffee cup? Everybody's seen that, yeah? Right. Why do you think that was there? Why do you think that was there? The actress would not have purposely left that cup there during a take. No way. That shot was a rehearsal. They were just doing a camera take. They were just doing a camera pass. If you look, it's in and it's out. They're not even acting. They're just someone next to her is just generally chatting. And it was just B-roll that they threw in. But it was a last-minute thing, so nobody had time to paint it out. That's my assumption. That's my assumption of what exactly had happened. So those sorts of things, yeah, you can paint those things out, but you know, purposely leaving things unset, like cables going through, or not having attention to detail, is very, very kind of messy and risky. You end up actually diluting your visual effects budget considerably less. In one film I worked on, 35% of the VFX budget went on cleanup because of shit that could have been done on the spot if people were paying attention. It's a waste of money. It's totally a waste of money because then you're diluting the quality. You want to maximize that budget to quality itself. So you try and reduce these on the spot experimentation. You reduce and remove the faults. You treat the film like you were actually shooting in 1950. Visual effects doesn't exist. Let's get it right. Let's pay attention to detail. Visual effects really is another discipline to the filmmaking process. It's not there to replace anything. It's not there to fix your mistakes. It is there to supplement what you cannot physically achieve in camera. That is it. Okay? So if you cannot physically get it in camera because of cost, practicality, or safety, they're the only three reasons why you should use post. You should use visual effects. It's not physically practical for us to build a 1 mile high tower in King's Court, King's Palace in Bowerbilly. It's not possible for us to build this thing. So we need to do it digitally. This particular sequence that you're seeing here, it wasn't physically safe or practical or legal for us to actually smash a cow's head into a Jeep. Blue Cross will be all over us. All right? So we built one digitally. We couldn't get the cow to perform, or we wouldn't be able to get the cow to perform to get the guy to ride on it. It was too old. So again, built a rig, planned it, executed it, built it digitally. This was all planned. This entire setup, all these sequences you're seeing right now, these are all planned. These weren't experiments on spot. So this is how to do it correctly. But there's still that variation of where the camera's going to be. And the experimentation, the variation that we had in this was that all of a sudden the sun was not favorable for us. So this is giving you an idea of the kind of things that I'm talking about keeping everything neat on set. So this is a film called Carla, okay? This was the live plates that we're dealing with, all right? So you can see exactly what the actual, so you can see people over there, we've got production team over here, you have some other individuals which are, all this stuff is messy out the backside. This all needs to be cleaned out of the way, all right, to keep a clean matte line. It's not physically possible at that particular point for us to set all blue mats up. So this is a roto job from hell, really. And a lot of big amount of cleanup. But a lot of digital props, digital buildings extensions are actually being put over the top. You've even got the drone crew behind the tree stood there like this. That was even requested to be painted out, even though none of you would have spotted them. Because they knew it, so we needed to paint the thing out. The other matter is basically, this is supposed to be Dharavi. Okay? One of the primary problems that we have here is that it's so clean. Dharavi itself is basically, if you look at aerial shots, it's very dirty. Okay? For accumulation of dust, mostly on the roofs. So you have that dust accumulation on the roofs themselves. So you need to try and add that on. So just 5 minutes worth of just going around and throwing dust on the roofs and all this debris, etc., would have saved a lot of time in post. And because we, as a studio, got a double linear there, because, yeah, see? Look, dirty. Just spend 5 minutes and go ahead and do that. So we follow the art direction, what we get, okay? We follow the art direction of what we receive in the plates, unless someone tells us otherwise. And what I would normally say is like, right, you make the thing dirty. But what actually ended up happening was that we ended up having to go and dirty up all the live set, which, yeah, we've got a laser scan of the space, but we don't actually have anything which is actually above that much. So we're actually having to create photogrammetry from that particular location, from that shot, extracting all the frames. Thankfully, we've got a camera track through, patching holes here. There's huge holes in the set. All of this was cleanup work. All this here, all that over here. People where they're not supposed to be. Not enough crowd plates, not enough layers. Not enough attention to detail in some areas of the set, and a lot of cleanup work in here. We got told off that one of our buildings was like this. It's like, well, we follow the line of the set build. The set itself was like this. Oh, just straighten it. This happens. So again, attention to detail and being meticulous. So we have to dirty all of this stuff up. Okay, adding the extra streets was one thing, but actually physically going through and unnecessarily doing stuff that you can physically do on set, that wastes you money. You can put that money into something else. Put it into the coffee if you like. We all love coffee. So the worst 4 words that you ever hear on set, the worst 4 words that no VFX supervisor wants to hear, or any AD should say, are the words, fix it in post. My response to that is, no, go for another take, because it's going to save you time and money. A lot of assistant directors, they basically don't understand the fact, because they're just on the spot, just trying to get things moving along. They don't understand that one more take or another layer or something at least will actually physically save a lot more time and money by just rolling again. Simple as that. Okay? There is time, it can be done. So from the set work itself, you basically need to kind of preempt the workload. You need to determine exactly the load that you need to do. If you've logged everything and you've got everything noted down properly, you should be able to determine what your end result is going to be like. Okay? So your on-spot login should be as descriptive as possible. You need to basically get everybody in the zone, talk to various departments, talk to the director, talk to the DP, to determine exactly what needs to be there in the shot. Don't leave things in the air. If possible, draw diagrams, get sketches done. Everybody is in the zone at that point. Don't ask them 4 days later, a week later, a month later, because they have to rewind their brain and get back into that creative zone for that particular scene itself. So it's best to kind of get those decisions made there and then. Even to a point of what we did on Barbly 1 is literally sit this guy. You can just about make him out. He's sat underneath this screen there on a Mac, and we've just literally shot a plate for the waterfall down in Kerala. Okay? We literally take a plate from that, give it to him. He's took some of the references with him, and we're literally doing on-the-spot matte painting and concept work. And then going straight to the director, this is what we got in the idea for this shot. Yes? No? And he'll take a decision there and then because he's in the zone, he's in that mindset at that particular point in time. If I asked him that question 2 months later, 3 months later, once they had the edit locked, because it's a combination scene, it's a song, it's going to take a little bit of time, he's going to go, I don't know, I need to see it later. Because his mind will be elsewhere, it'll be in some other scene or some other process. At that particular point in time, if you can get them to lock down, you will get a better decision, and that worked. It worked perfectly for us. So once you finish your shoot, you collate everything. Everything's collated together, a place for everything, and everything in its place. You make sure that everything, your filing structure and your population of your asset tracking system is all finalized. You then go into post-phase. I'm rushing a little bit because I've got the big flashing times up here. You go into post-phase, so anything that you can physically get an estimation on what the final work's going to be like for example, set extension work, that's the composition of this tower, that's where that's extending, this is a rough animation of how things are going to be done directly on the footage itself. It will determine final load requirements, it will also determine final department loads, and it will lock creative decisions, so that you're not having the later on. You will actually get these things locked down as much as possible, at least around about 70%. And it reduces the chance of adjustments and changes. Okay? From that point also, you're getting yourself into tracking, you're getting things locked down, you get the rushes through, you can start preempting this work, you can get everything kind of finalized, and from that, you can start getting your set in there, and everything tied together. So you're starting the assembly process at this point. All that stuff you have done earlier, you can just whack in at this point and see if it works. Should do. If you've done your test shoots, if you've done rehearsals, you should be able to slot this stuff in and it should work off the bat. So with all this stuff coming in now, your project tracking system that you set up earlier is now starting to be fed in and come into play. So this is actually a snapshot of what we actually physically use. This was the end result of what we actually had at the end of the day. So you're going through quality control checking. So you're checking your quality of every single department, material going in, material going out, and the process within. So every single one has a QC stage. You're having dailies, you're cross-checking those ones to make sure things are going through and that deliveries are being met. You're starting, in essence, an assembly line. Get things through to the next stage of creativity. So you have a finite amount of time, but you've got to work within that time scale. Okay? One of the biggest headaches here, okay, and when you start getting into QC, you start playing the game of find something wrong on spot. Find something wrong. That pixel there, that pixel there. Because everything is on monitor, you're only seeing this much. When you're seeing it on a big screen, you can literally, because it's digital, you can wind back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. That thing's wrong. Fix that. It's like, no one's going to see it. So you maximize, again, your time set. Do you need this? Like I said in that shot before, there was a drone operator. Did any of you see him? No, I challenge anybody who did, because he was standing pretty much in the same posture as everybody else. But we still had to paint him because one person noticed it. And that person was the person who was on set. So they knew he was there. It's like, I didn't even know he was there. So this one here, the reason why I brought this Cuthbertson one up is because we went through so many iterations of actually trying to get the jump right for him. Okay? He jumps down off the balcony and hits the ground. And we tried so many iterations. The actor was actually hoisted up on a cable. We didn't drop him, obviously. He's getting on a bit now. He would have killed us if we dropped him. But we lowered him down, and people acted kind of relatively slowly relative to camera, and then it was ramped. We then also cut him, and we repositioned him to give him a little bit more height drop. But we were struggling with regards to the acceleration and the velocity, so we ended up actually getting a bag of cement, and this is actually the old building we were in, and then dropping it off to get the acceleration and working out to determine the velocity, etc., and the impact. Unfortunately, he didn't have the full kind of superhero landing kind of thing. But if it had gone right down, it would have been a lot more kind of dramatic. But unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to be able to adjust that. That leads us finally into DI. Okay? And the status that the best visual effects are the ones you don't see. If you've noticed the fact that it's visual effects, if it's standing out and glaring you in the face, then we failed. Simple as that. Because it shouldn't distract you from the hero doing his hero thing. If it's distracting you, it's like, oh, something's not right. Then it's a problem. All right? Some of the hardest things to do are the things that you see every single day. As animators and effects guys who are in training, you'll struggle with things like faces, facial animation work. You'll struggle with natural effects, fire, smoke, water, etc. Because you are all experts at computational fluid dynamics. You're all experts at character animation, just as much as everyone on the street is an expert as well, because you see them every single day. So getting those right is going to be a tough, tough order for people. And going through this DI process where things are meticulously checked, is very, very tough process to go through as an artist, because you get the feedback and it's like a knife sometimes going through the heart. But you work through it and you try and get it neatly as possible. I'm just going to finish off with a section of the title sequence that we did for 2.0. So this was actually going back to I slung this in at the last minute because somebody mentioned earlier on, I think it was in the Beam presentation yesterday, that not only did they actually had a time scale limitation, they had a budgetary limitation, they also had a workforce limitation, and just to add insult to injury, they're doing everything in 3D. So this kind of made me think about, okay, we did exactly the same thing on this thing. On this thing, we had a little bit of time to play with it, and we did it in between a few projects, but the direction changed. The direction of the shot of the sequence changed to some degree, and then styles got adjusted, etc., etc. Then it's about make it wider, make it wider, make it closer, bring it closer, bring it closer. So we're going through various different revisions of this. I think there's around about 15 to 20 revisions on this, and then right at the last minute, we're getting name changes. Adding this person in, adding that person in, taking that person in, taking that person out, and so on and so on and so on. So all of these are getting adjusted up until the last minute, and it's all in stereo, and it's motion blurred, and it's all ray traced, and it's true motion blur. It's not faked, it's not vector based, it's all 3D motion blur, along with the depth of field. The depth of field is all 3D depth of field as well. All the lenses are animated. I wanted to do this, you know, nicely and neatly, so they all work through, you know, as much as physically possible. I wanted to do a lot more, you know, things animating and locking in together, because by now it's getting a little boring, especially when you're seeing it in 2D. But again, time scale. So this is an example of like, yeah, if you split task it, it will actually save you time later on. So the background was actually rendered in one pass, and then obviously all the text was rendered out in a separate pass, but it was actually done for 3 languages. So I did, it was like 3 minutes, full CG sequence, 3 languages, and all the characters, letters had to be adjusted for each and every single language. Plus, we ended up actually having the names shifted around and retimed for different languages. So in the Hindi version, there's more stay on this one. There's an extra one inserted halfway through, which is not in the Tamil and the Telugu versions. So you're juggling around, you're having to plan all this lot in advance to make sure that you can obviously get all this stuff done neatly. So, just to wrap up, this is a blatant plug for my presentation tomorrow. Advertising, kids, you gotta love it. So what's the most important thing to get a career in visual effects if you're crazy? That's tomorrow. I think it's 10:30. Someone better knock on my door and wake me up, please. And that's tomorrow morning, I think, in the ballroom. So that's me wrapping up. Any questions?
We do have a lot of questions,
Oh,
but
right,
we don't
okay.
have much time to ask all of the questions.
Okay.
I'll try and keep it, you know, at least a couple of questions from, and then we shall come to you, of course.
Yeah.
The first question is, how much VFX knowledge should the DOP, Director of Photography, how much knowledge should he have during shooting the VFX sequences?
As much as possible. Basically, in a nutshell. It always really, really helps because you can bounce ideas. They will then know how to light a screen properly. They'll know how to, you know, light subjects for post. It's always best to know what your end aesthetic's going to be, and if you've bounced ideas like this off your creative decision makers earlier on, they know what the background's going to be like. They know exactly what the lighting system's going to be like of the entire scene, so you can light your foreground if you're putting your background in later on. Or if you've already shot your background, you know how to replicate it. If they know the process, you actually reduce the, why are we doing this? Questions that you two tend to get. So what's this big shiny ball on a stick for? Why are you color charting everything? Don't you trust me? Like, it's not for your purpose, it's for mine. Don't worry about it, it's okay. I'm not worried about your color calibration, dude. This is just for me to make sure my stuff's correct. So getting color charts and etc., you know, they'll look at you and go, why, what? So if you get all that out the way earlier, then you get a lot more cooperation. That's for sure.
And I have one of the most asked question I have to say from most
Okay.
of the speakers, so we're going to ask you this question too.
What software?
You're absolutely right.
God.
Which software was actually used for compositing in Bahubali?
Etch-a-Sketch. Crayons. We used a lot of crayons. It's all Crayola. It was pen, ink, and Crayola. That's it. Okay? Lots of flipbook stuff. Doesn't matter. Seriously. It's the artist, it's not the tool. Doesn't matter. Honest to God. I know the reason why I get asked this. I know the reason why all these guys get asked this, and it's basically because if they learn this particular piece of software, then they have a better chance of getting into a studio because they're already within that pipeline, okay? If you are any good, it doesn't matter what software you use because you will pick up, a studio will hire you based on your merit. Like, oh shit, he uses Maya instead of Max, or he uses Houdini instead of Maya, or he uses Maya instead of Houdini. What we're going to do? They will take a chance on you if you're good. If you're good, they'll go, I don't care what he's done it in, or she's done it in. It doesn't matter to me. We will take that person, even to a point of like, we'll talk amongst ourselves and go, let's try and work out a process to slot this person in to make sure that this pipeline is working, even with them involved. I had, all our effects guys initially were all Max guys. We had one guy who went, I want to do Houdini. This is what I've done. We're like, okay, let's do that. And he was the only Houdini guy that we had. And we still managed to slot him in because of the sort of work that he was doing, the sort of quality of stuff that he was churning out for us. So it honestly doesn't matter. Your show reel is the thing that matters the most. Showing what you can do matters the most. Again, I'm going to cover all this stuff tomorrow, guys.
Fantastic. All right, we have just one question from this gentleman here. I'm hoping it's not anything to do with software.
Thanks. So, is there a separate department for quality check? So, once your shots are done, is there any separate department who checks them?
There is 2 or 3. There's 2 or 3 departments. We normally do it internally within each department. So a HOD will obviously sign off on stuff that's coming in and it's going out of there. The next HOD will also sign it in and out. And at certain key milestones, the VFX supervisor will also check on that to make sure that that's okay before it goes to the next department as well. So certain key creative elements will always be checked. For me, there's certain ones that I personally check that I look forward to checking, because I have an interest in it. It's certain things that I enjoy, within the creative process. And there's some which I don't. Like tracking, I don't check personally, because I know for a fact that these guys have done it and they're meticulous, and I know it's going to be perfectly fine. I used to every single pixel, 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 slip, pixel, 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 slip, 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 slip. I have, you look around, there's like 10 people behind you like this. Kind of worried that, oh shit, don't know my shot. Oh, God. I don't bother with that now. I know for a fact that it's going to come through okay, so I don't need to QC it. I have other guys who do that internally within the department. When it comes to stuff going out, so within comp, we'll sit on them just to make sure that, the things, the fundamentals are being done, grains matched, light wraps, making sure light levels, white balances, etc., etc. Everything is matched. Every single thing that you can QC. It's like a checkbox. Done that? Yep. Done that? Yep. Done that? Yep. Done that? No. Right. You need to do that. And just cross-checking against live references of things. If there's a doubt, the artist will come to us. I'm not sure about this. Let's double-check it ourselves internally before it goes to that QC process. Then it goes QC for confirmation. The VFX lead will also check on that at that particular point. Then it will go to the client, they'll check it, and then it will get punted to DI. If DI are okay with it, they'll cross-check it as well, and their confirmation point going in, and then the DP will cross-check it as well to make sure, and along with the colorist, to make sure all the mats are right, the colors are matching, grains matching, and everything else. If you're dealing with something like an OTT platform like Netflix or whatever, I can say X amount about their processes because of NDA, etc. There are levels on levels of QC that they have. I can't go into the fine points, but they have a lot more, to a point where you'd be like, what? They check this? And even to a point of like, we've had, you know, showcases of stuff like that's been kicked back. And it's just this tiny little thing that you would never ever notice. But it's a product that's being bought, so therefore it needs to be perfect. And that's perfectly fine. But there are levels on levels on levels of quality control. Again, for me, it's a case of, do you notice it? Without you pausing it and going through one by one by one. Like the first Jurassic Park. Has everybody seen the raptor disappearing? In the final fight with the T-Rex, when the raptors jump on him, the T-Rex grabs him and throws it against that big statue. Watch it. There's a frame where the entire raptor disappears. Seriously, it's there. It's in the film. They haven't fixed it afterwards when it went to DVD or anything like that. That stuff is there. It's like, okay, right, how long is this going to take? Oh, the raptor's disappeared. Do we re-render this? Oh, no one will notice it. Just pump it through, pump it through, pump it through. So it's a case of like, do we wait like another week for this thing to bloody render, or do we actually just punt it through and hopefully nobody noticed it? And nobody did. I dare say, hands up who know about that. Does anybody know about that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10, 15, 12, 15 people in this entire audience know about that. Go and watch it again. You'll notice it frame by frame. If you go through, all of a sudden that raptor just vanishes. I didn't realize it until maybe 6 months ago. Fun. Anyway.
Thank you for spoiling Jurassic Park.
You're welcome.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of another fantastic session by Peter. Everybody, come on. A big, big round of applause, please. And Peter, for once again spending some time with us. That's okay, we'll pick it up. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. Do we have a big, big round of applause once again, please? Thank you. I think from tomorrow onwards, we should start calling him our Bahubali, correct? At least, I think you do the superhero stance much better now. Talking so much about him. With this, we've come to the most awaited session, I have to say. We've always known for ending every day with a bang, and today we're doing just that, because today we have another fantastic movie in store for you. Ladies and gentlemen, for the very first time, once again premiering right here at Bengaluru VFX, we have a film by Graffiti Multimedia. This is the screening of Krish, Trish and Balti Boy. So you guys ready for that? Come on, a little bit more energy in the house. Are you guys ready? Lights, please.
Trish and Balti Boy, total जोश हमारा है, स्टोरी तुम्हें सुनानी है, रोक सको तो रोको हमको आज हमारी बारी है, Krish and Balti Boy, Krish and Balti Boy, वरदंत की पंगति कुंदकली अधराधर पल्लव खोलन की, चपला चमके अवधेश गने पुनि मंद मंद मुस्कान बने, संकट में डाला पलकट पर जा और मिट कटवा गिरगिट बन जा, Krish and Balti Boy, पक्की अपनी यारी है, रोक सको तो रोको हमको हमारी बारी है, Krish and Balti Boy.
थोड़ा राइट, हाँ राइट, तो थोड़ा लेफ्ट, थोड़ा सा राइट, अरे नहीं, फिर से लेफ्ट।
ओफो, ये मार्च पास करवाना बंद करो बाल्टी बॉय, त्रिश आती होगी। और अगर उसके आने से पहले सब रेडी नहीं हुआ तो वो हमें रेडी टू ईट स्नैक्स की तरह बिना कुक किए खा जाएगी। हाँ।
मैं करूँ तो क्या करूँ? पहली बार कृष्ण ने इतने इम्पोर्टेंट काम की जिम्मेवारी मुझे दी है और
तुम्हारा दिमाग तो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के टाइम पे ही हड़ताल पे चला गया था, क्यों, है ना?
और अब हम हड़ताल पे जा रहे हैं। तो क्या कह रहे थे तुम बाल्टी बॉय? थोड़ा लेफ्ट ना? हाँ, हो जाएगा।
क्यों, क्या हुआ? अभी तो हड़ताल पर जा रहे थे।
लगता है ट्रिश को देख के डर गए।
ट्रिश, सुना तुमने? बाल्टी बॉय तुम्हें डरावना कह रहा है, जैसे कि तुम कोई बिल्ली नहीं भूत हो। अरे यार, ये क्या किया? मेरी पतंग क्यों काटी?
ताकि तुम ये समझ जाओ कि हर चीज टाइम पे करनी चाहिए। मस्ती के समय मस्ती और काम के समय सिर्फ काम।
लेकिन मैं तो
कैंची की तरह जीप चलाने की जगह अगर तुमने चूहों की मदद कर दी होती तो अब तक कहानी शुरू हो गई होती।
ट्रिश, ये तुमने अच्छा नहीं किया। जाने दो, दोस्तों के बीच तो ऐसे छोटे मोटे मजाक चलते रहते हैं, है ना?
लगता है अब तुम भी ट्रिश से डर गए। हाँ।
मैं किसी से नहीं डरता बाल्टी बॉय।
ट्रिश, मधुमक्खी।
अच्छा, अब मिले हुए? कोई बात नहीं, हर बंदर का दिन आता है, मेरा भी आएगा।
अरे वाह ट्रिश, ये चित्र तो बहुत सुंदर है।
हाँ बाल्टी बॉय, जानते हो ऐसी चित्रकला को ठांका कहा जाता है। ये शैली बौद्ध भिक्षुओं ने खास तौर पर भगवान बुद्ध के जीवन से जुड़ी घटनाओं को दर्शाने के लिए विकसित की थी। आमतौर पर ऐसे चित्र कॉटन या सिल्क के कपड़े पर बनाए जाते हैं, लेकिन इसी शैली की कुछ पेंटिंग्स अजंता की गुफाओं में आज भी देखी जा सकती हैं।
अरे वाह, तो आज हम इस शैली की कौन सी कहानी सुनने वाले हैं ट्रिश?
आज की कहानी है दोस्ती की ऐसी दास्तान जिसे हिमालय के पहाड़ों पर बसने वाले लोग आज भी याद करते हैं। यहाँ की हसीन वादियों में पाया जाता है घुघुटी नाम का एक सुंदर पक्षी। कहते हैं कि इस पक्षी की आवाज इतनी मीठी होती है कि अगर कोई एक बार उसका गीत सुन ले तो वो दोबारा उसे सुने बिना नहीं रह सकता। और इसीलिए कई साल पहले पहाड़ों के राजा देवव्रत ने एक घुघुटी पक्षी को अपने बेटे राजकुमार अमर के मनोरंजन के लिए नियुक्त किया।
बढ़िया, खूब भाल, वाह। और अब आज के जमाने का गान सिर्फ आपके लिए राजकुंवर। यो, जिसे आप मकर संक्रांत कहते हैं, उसे हम और भी कई नामों से जानते हैं। जानना चाहेंगे? Hit it! आजा मैं सिखा दूं तुझे एक नया सा ज्ञान। संक्रांत का हो या पोंगल, बिहू या उत्तरायण, जो भी कह लो तुम इससे बस रखना ध्यान इस बात की, मिलना सबसे प्यार से, फ्रेंड हो चाहे एनिमी, मिलके उड़ाना पतंगी, कटना जाए डोर डोर डोर। तिल गुड़ के लड्डू खा के फिर मांगोगे मोर मोर मोर। यो यो, गुगुटी आउट।
वाह वाह गुगुटी, बढ़िया परफॉर्मेंस।
थैंक यू, थैंक यू।
मंत्री, गुगुटी एंड बैंड को हमारी ओर से पुरस्कार दिया जाए।
मोएकी कैसे सरकार, अगर ऐसे ही चलता रहा तो वो दिन दूर नहीं जब आप चुगेंगे दाना दुनका और गुगुटी मोती खाएगा।
गधा, कभी तो पॉजिटिव बोल। इस घुघुटी को तो सबक सिखाना ही होगा।
एक, दुई, तीनी, सारी।
एया की घुघुटी, मेहनत तो हम सबने बराबर किया, तो फिर हमें इतना कम इनाम क्यों?
भिखारी के लिए भीख जितनी मिली ठीक। अगर मेरे बैंड में नहीं होते तो ये सोने के सिक्के देखने को भी नहीं मिलते। तुम लोग तो सिर्फ पीछे जुनजुना बजाते हो, लेकिन असली जादू तो मेरी आवाज और मेरे रूप का है। राजकुंवर भी सबसे ज्यादा मुझी से प्यार करते हैं।
अपने रूप का इतना गुरूर तो चांद को भी नहीं होता है गुगुटी।
होगा भी कैसे, उस चांद पर एक काला दाग जो है।
इतना घमंड ठीक नहीं है बंधु।
मुझे ना तुम्हारे लेक्चर की जरूरत है, न तुम्हारी। हुर, हुर, हुर। जब तक राजकुंवर मेरे बंधु है, मुझे किसी और बंधु की कोई जरूरत नहीं।